It's been almost 10 years since Missy Bevers was bludgeoned to death inside of a Midlothian church.
They want to keep a spotlight on this case and on the life and death of Missy Bevers.
Because we want justice for Missy. Her killer deserves to be caught. That's why we do this. Keep people aware, make sure that Missy's not forgotten.
Say that her husband worried about her safety before her death.
I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand the fact that somebody hurt her, and I want them to pay the ultimate price. She did, so they need to.
Hi everyone, how are you guys doing? I missed you. If you guys are new here, my name is Meadow Harper and this is my YouTube channel where I make videos about conspiracy theories, true crime, unsolved mysteries with a double scoop of my Sagittarius energy. So if that sounds like your vibe, go ahead and hit subscribe. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you don't want to miss a video from me, because that would be a shame. We're very interactive here and we've got a great community, if I do say so myself. But if you're just here to lurk and hang out, don't worry about it. I'm going to be doing my makeup today. We're going to be talking about some true crime. Come and go as you please. No commitment necessary. My hair today is in pain, and I have not had time to fix it. So we are just ignoring it today, and we're just focusing on the face. Anyway, for today's video, we are going to be talking about a somewhat recent case. This case was actually brought to my attention a few days ago, but it actually happened in 2016. Today, we are going to be reviewing the case of Missy Bevers, and we have a lot to get into with this case, so let's get into it. Early in the morning on April 18th, 2016, a fitness student woke up extra early to get ready for a fitness class that they had been going to for the past couple weeks. It was around 4:30 a.m. that morning, and students started leaving their home to get to a 5 a.m. class at Creekside Church in Texas. Which, side note, but that sounds like absolute torture to me. I did ballet for 10 years and I had a 9 a.m. class on Saturdays to do Pilates, and I hated it. I could not imagine waking up at 4:30 a.m. to go to a fitness class. That sounds like actual torture. But anyways, the students arrived at Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas. They showed up at around 5 a.m., which is when their class was supposed to be. And there was one student who was waiting very anxiously in the parking lot because it was actually their very first class. And they had been in the parking lot since around 4:45 that morning. And on this night in particular, it was pouring down rain as a result of Texas's famous thunderstorms that they had in the month of April. And in the past, the students had done their workouts outside in the parking lot of the church, but their fitness coach had actually posted on her Facebook the day before saying that despite the rain, they were still going to be exercising. They were just going to be exercising inside of the church. So the students, after they arrived, started heading inside of the church to go to their class, and that's when they realized that their fitness trainer wasn't there to greet them. Their fitness trainer was usually waiting for them somewhere where they could see them to introduce them, say hello, good morning, that sort of thing. She was always there no matter what to greet them. So they were a little confused when she wasn't there, but they didn't really think too much of it. So they opened the doors to the church and they made their way to their classroom. And when they opened the door, they were greeted with the dead body of 45-year-old Missy Bevers. Terry Leanne Strickland was born on August 9th, 1970 in Graham City, Texas, making her a Leo. Growing up, she was affectionately given the nickname Missy, which is what we will be calling her today. And Missy was described to be a very friendly child. In the South, there's a lot of Southern hospitality, and she was no stranger to that. She was very kind to strangers, and she was loved by everybody who met her. Missy graduated Jacksboro High School in 1988, and later she would graduate from Tarleton State University for her bachelor's. If I don't know how to say the names of things, it's because I'm from California and not from Texas. So I also couldn't find out what her bachelor's was in. If you know, please comment down below. I couldn't find that information personally. In the year 1997, Missy started working at a department store. And sometime in 1997 was when she met a man by the name of Brandon Bevers. The two began dating, and actually on their first date, Brandon showed up to their very casual lunch that they had planned in a tux because he had to go to a wedding after, and I just thought that was really cute. Missy thought that this was funny, and after a few months of dating, the two were married in June of the following year, 1998. After their honeymoon, Missy decided that she wanted to go back to school to get her teaching certificate, specifically so that she could teach special education classes. So she got her teacher's certificate and began teaching special ed classes. She worked for 2 years until she found out that she was pregnant, and she ended up giving birth to her first daughter in 2001. This is a side note, I'm not going to be naming the victims' children in this case because I personally don't really like doing that. I want to try to give them as much privacy as they can have. But Missy and Brandon ended up having 3 daughters together. Their first daughter was born in 2001, their second daughter was born in 2003, and their youngest daughter was born in 2007. After Missy started having kids, she wanted to step away from working so that she could be a full-time mom. So when her first daughter was born, she and her husband both agreed that she would step down from working so that she could stay home, raise her daughter, which she was more than happy to do. She wanted to be a mother more than anything. She wanted to raise her babies, and she loved being a mother. But once her children got a little bit older, she wanted to do something more for herself, you know? She loved being a mom, and that was her #1 priority, but she did want to have some of her own individualism. She wanted to do some of the things that she wanted to do, and now that her kids were older, they didn't need that much attention or caring to like you need to care for a little toddler. She had more time on her hands. So because she was looking for something to do, Missy started getting more into fitness. She started working out more, she started losing the weight that she had gained during her 3 pregnancies, and she started taking classes at this fitness camp called Camp Gladiator, which is a small organization operating out of Texas that was run by a husband and a wife. So Missy started attending these classes, and soon she started to ponder around the idea of becoming one of their personal trainers on staff. And once the idea popped in her head, she pretty much decided that's what she wanted to do, so she got her training certificate very quickly, and she began teaching fitness classes for the Camp Gladiator company. Now, from the outside, Missy's life looked amazing. She was a great mom who loved her kids. She had a husband who loved her. She was a God-fearing woman who went to church and took her children to church. She was super fit. She was in shape. She was healthy. However, as you would probably know, things aren't always what they seem from the outside. Missy and her husband had been having some problems with their finances as well as their marriage. Missy was messaging other men as well as having physical contact. I think I'm safe with that one. With other men. And I'm not giving my opinions, I'm just stating the facts of the case. Her husband was not being loyal either, though. I don't really want to get into the details of these rumors because most of them are just rumors. I don't know the full legitimacy of them, but I do know that Missy was specifically caught messaging other men. Their financial situation wasn't great either. I'm not really sure how bad things were exactly, but I can imagine with the stress of the affairs and the financial situation, it wasn't making things easy for them or their marriage. However, despite this, Missy and Brandon stayed together. The two ended up working on their marriage, and things were seemingly better in the year leading up to the incident. Missy was an avid Facebook user. She would post all the time, and she was really the definition of a Facebook mom, if that makes sense. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. She would post funny memes. She would constantly shout out her husband, her daughters. She would make updates all the time, and she was actually on Facebook also to communicate with her fitness students. On April 14th, Missy was out of town because she was going to a Camp Gladiator fitness. They called it a field trip, but she went from her home in Red Oak, Texas to Austin, Texas, which is about a 2.5-hour drive away from her home. And she was there as a part of the Camp Gladiator training program, I think. She was teaching and she was also exercising for herself there. And on April 14th, she made a post from the Camp Gladiator fitness program area that she was staying, and she said, quote, "CG Arena, this is what I'm talking about. CG Midlothian, someday your trainers are coming to take you on a field trip here. Oh, hang on. Join CG Games and you can come experience it all." And in the post you can see she posted, it's a boot camp sort of a thing. I don't know, I've never done one of those. She was at the training camp on April 14th, so she was currently out of town. And the very next day, on April 15th, she posted on her Facebook, quote, "Please say a prayer for Brandon Bevers this morning while he is having minor surgery today. I hope you feel better soon, honey. Love you." To which Brandon responded, quote, "Thanks, Strick. I'm going to convince the surgery team the doctor is actually conducting a frontal lobotomy. Liven the place up a bit." So the reason why she posted that was, one, because she wanted to inform their friends that he was going into surgery. Maybe they didn't know, but also she wasn't in town when he had this surgery. And the specific surgery that Brandon got is unclear. It varies depending on who you look up and the different reports. But anyway, it's not really that important. But what was important is that Missy was out of town when Brandon was going into surgery, so her mother-in-law, Brandon's mother, was the one who ended up driving him to and from the hospital. And because of this, Missy ended up calling her mother-in-law, thanking her for taking her husband to surgery while she wasn't there. And she was able to say, thank you and I love you. And unfortunately, that was the very last day that Martha spoke to her daughter-in-law. On April 16th, Brandon had recovered from his surgery and he ended up boarding a flight to Mississippi for a long-awaited fishing trip. He posted on his Facebook page his status update, and Missy was able to respond saying, I love you, I hope you have a great time. Just being overall supportive of her husband as he went on this fun fishing trip. And she was able to comment that she loved him. Missy had a class that she was supposed to be teaching on Monday, April 18th at 5 a.m. And on April 17th, she made a post that said, quote, "No excuses, you are gladiators," with the post that she posted saying, quote, "If it's raining, we're still training. Tomorrow begins week 1, endurance. It's weight day. If you've been using the same weight for the last 2 camps, it's time to go up. 5 a.m. Creekside Church, we have cover under the front awning. 9 a.m. Midlothian Conference Center. We are moving to Conference Center." Now, she posted this because when she ordinarily taught at the Creekside Church, it wasn't raining, so they would exercise outside. But during that weekend, it had been raining very heavily, which of course made it not impossible, but uncomfortable to exercise outside. There were thunderstorms, it was pouring down rain, which would totally make me want to leave my comfy bed to go exercise in the rain at 4 a.m. Anyway, before Missy went to bed that night, she ended up calling Brandon after he had landed in Mississippi, just to check in, just to see how each other were doing, how he was feeling since his surgery. The two had a brief phone call just because Missy had to go to bed and wake up at 3:30 the next morning to get ready for her class, and Brandon told her to be careful in the rain tomorrow, and they were able to exchange I love yous before hanging up and going their separate ways. And unfortunately, that was the very last time that they were able to speak to each other. The next morning, Missy woke up at 3:30 like she had been planning on doing to get ready for her class at 5 a.m. She arrived at Creekside Church at 4:16 a.m. And like I said, she was planning on having her fitness classes indoors, so she began taking her fitness gear inside from her car. Around 45 minutes later, Missy's students began arriving for class, and when they entered the church, they found that the door was broken. This was slightly alarming, and as they searched the scene for Missy, they found her unresponsive in a pool of her own blood. There was scattered glass around her, and she was barely clinging to life. Her students called 911, and first responders arrived at the scene at 5:10 a.m. One of the students ended up calling Brandon, her husband, telling him to come back home as soon as he could because there had been an accident. Brandon rented a car in Mississippi and drove back to Texas, which would take him a total of 9 hours to get back home. Shortly after the first responders arrived on scene, the police showed up, and they were doing a lockdown. They were looking for intruders, looking for anything that could lead them to what happened. They noticed that Missy was surrounded not only by her own blood, but by broken glass as well as tools. And as the police were looking around the church to see if they could find anything else that could lead them to the person who did this, they found that the doors and glass were broken around the church. And as they were first investigating the scene, they suspected that this was a burglary gone wrong. But while police were searching the area, the first responders were back in the fitness room where they were trying to revive Missy, and unfortunately, she was pronounced dead at the scene at the age of 45. And the first responders noticed that she had random puncture marks all over her body. Meanwhile, while the police were investigating the area, they noticed that Missy's car was still in the parking lot. Not only was her car still in the parking lot, but it was completely untouched. Her keys were on the taillight, her cell phone was on her dashboard, her iPad as well as her gun were still in the car, as well as all of her fitness equipment. This was suspicious right off the bat because if this was a potential burglary, why didn't they want to steal from people's cars? As well as inside the church, when the police were looking in closer, they realized that nothing had been stolen. There was money, there was furniture, computers, other sorts of valuables that were still in the church. So what exactly happened here? Now, luckily, the church did have security cameras. However, they did not have any security cameras that worked outside. There was one security camera for the outside, but it had been broken long before the incident, and no one at the church had the opportunity to fix it. So that was kind of a loose end, but they did have working security cameras inside of the building. And when the police were investigating, they found the footage from the security cameras inside of the building, and this is what they found. Now, the hair on my arms stands up every time I watch that video. That video is terrifying. This surveillance footage that they caught was captured around 4 a.m. and Missy didn't end up arriving at the scene until around 4:16. So that means that the person in the video was inside of the building before Missy got to the church. And as you can see, this person was walking around in a very casual way, just being ominous. The person was wearing a SWAT uniform with the words police on the back of the jacket, and they had a helmet that was covering their face as well as gloves that were covering their hands. I forgot to mention, but the police saw in the footage that the intruder was carrying around a hammer, which is the suspected weapon used to harm and eventually end Missy's life. Because if you remember when I said earlier, the paramedics found that her body had been stabbed and punctured, specifically around her head and her lower body, and these injuries were too severe and she ended up passing away because of these injuries. And it was clear to the police that 1, this person was not on the police task force, and 2, they were almost 1000% positive that this was the person who killed Missy. Because like I said, this person wasn't really here to steal anything. They were calm, they weren't in a hurry, or my personal theory is that this person was under the influence of either drugs or alcohol, because I think that would have explained their relaxed manner and why they were so slow and calm during their burglary. But anyway, the police showed this footage shortly after Missy's death. They also stated that they had additional footage of Missy walking down the hallway and looking behind her at one point, but that footage has not been released to the public yet. It also hasn't been revealed that they have footage of the intruder and Missy crossing paths. Now, if you were to go back and look at the footage, you can see the way that this person walks, and that was one of the biggest clues that the police had to identifying this person. But it was also made very difficult because of the way that they were walking. They couldn't identify if this was a male or a female. They couldn't tell if this was a male or a female intruder, and one of the ways that they were hoping that they could tell the difference was by their walking pattern. The police were able to identify that the person favored their left leg, which meant that they probably had a current or former injury on their right leg. And in the first statement that was released, they suspected that the intruder was between the height 5'2" to 5'7", but they later revealed that the intruder's height was between 5'8" to 5'10". So there's a bit of a discrepancy there. The police additionally thought that the person was a woman based on their height, as well as how large the SWAT uniform looked on this person. Usually when a uniform like that is made for somebody, it's made to be custom, so it's made to be fit to your personal body. You can see clearly that gear was not made for them. Honestly, I do not believe that it was a woman, mostly because if it was a 5'2" woman that attacked Missy, Missy would have been able to defend herself better than a man who is 5'10". Missy took great care of herself. She took self-defense classes. And if she was up against an attacker who was a 5'2" woman, she would have been able to defend herself better if she was up against somebody who was her height or smaller than her. The police ended up releasing this footage to the public, and they advised anybody who knew this person or knew somebody with similar walking pattern come forward with any information that they had. I also wanted to note that it's easy to get the gear that the person's wearing. You can purchase it online. You don't have to go to a police-issued store to get that kind of equipment and gear. If they were getting it from a police distribution center, if they were an officer, they would have to give their credentials, their information. And because no one did that for this uniform in specific, they weren't able to track the person who was wearing this gear. So the lead of the person's apparel was a dead end, and the police weren't able to get any information from that. As the police were investigating this case more, they were asking businesses in the area if they had seen anything suspicious leading up to the day or after the day or anything that they could use. And about a 5-minute drive from the road, there's a gun store called SWFA Outdoors, and the police found more suspicious security footage. This security footage featured a white 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima, and it was seen driving around the parking lot of the store around 2 a.m. of April 18th. Now, this footage is also extremely eerie. They were seen driving through the parking lot, turning their headlights on and off randomly, before eventually leaving the parking lot. The police weren't able to get the license plate from this car, unfortunately, because there was a light shining on the license plate. It was raining. The security cameras didn't have that kind of clarity. It was very difficult to transcribe the license plate from this video. There's a really good YouTube video by Tom Webster about Missy Bevers' case, and he goes over every single detail of this case, including the Nissan Altima, where he himself tries to transcribe the license plate number. I'll leave the video in the description if you guys are curious about it. Just a heads up, it is a 5-hour long video, so just be warned. And unfortunately, after all this time, the police still don't have any main suspects. But that does not mean that they haven't had suspects in the past. 2 of the main suspects at the beginning of this case were her husband Brandon, as well as her father-in-law Randy. In Thomas Webster's video, he goes into all of the suspects, but for me, I am just going to be going into the top 3 suspects. Again, like I said, the police's first suspect was her husband Brandon, because in murder cases, almost always the first suspect is going to be the spouse. Maybe Brandon's jealousy got the better of him. Maybe he was tired of Missy being unfaithful to him. However, suspicions of Brandon being the person who committed the crime were quickly disproven because he had an alibi. He was in Mississippi. He had other people around him, as well as the travel receipts from the rental car that he took from Mississippi to get back to Texas. Also, Brandon did not match the build of the person who was in the security footage. Brandon was over 6 feet tall, which was way too tall for the person in the security footage. So the police quickly dismissed Brandon as a suspect. The second suspect was Missy's father-in-law, Randy. And Randy has actually spoken publicly many times about this case, about what happened to his daughter-in-law. But Randy was actually in California at the time of the crime, to which he also had an alibi for. He had people with him, and there were also witnesses to confirm his whereabouts. However, the police were granted a search warrant to search Randy's home, where they found something suspicious. The police found in Randy's home a bag from a dry cleaners, which had blood stains on it. This was immediately suspicious, and the police ended up taking the shirt into the lab for DNA testing. And the police asked Randy about the blood that was on the shirt. Why was it there? What happened? Girl. Randy had told them that he was in California during the time of the crime, and he brought his dog with him. And when he was in California, his dog actually got into a fight with another dog. And the fight had gotten so violent that the dogs were ripping at each other and bleeding, I guess. So Randy told the police that the blood on the shirt was actually dog's blood, which I know sounds super sus, but the police, when they were testing the DNA on the shirt, actually confirmed that it was the blood of a canine. So Randy's alibi actually ended up checking out. The final suspect that I want to talk about is somebody that Missy had been messaging on LinkedIn. It was confirmed that Missy was having extramarital affairs with men, specifically messaging men online. And this man specifically, who we will call CW, confirmed to have been messaging Missy leading up to her death. The two had been romantically messaging each other for quite some time, and according to the police, neither of their spouses knew about these conversations. And it's important to note that CW was a former WWA fighter. MMA, sorry, not WWA. And the online community that has been talking about this case from the beginning stated that he actually had a previous foot injury, which could have contributed to the way that the intruder was walking. He was also former military, which could explain how he got the gear that he was wearing. And he hadn't made a Facebook post since 2013, but after Missy's death, he had posted on Facebook for the first time in 3 years, in 2016. But he deleted his Facebook account after he was named as a suspect in the case. Now, that all sounds very suspicious, and I definitely think he's one of the most interesting suspects. But what is important to note is that the two never actually met in person. And in their text messages, they had never talked about plans to meet each other. Also, I had mentioned he was a MMA fighter, and MMA fighters are very light on their feet naturally because of what they do, which would not have matched with the person's walking patterns in the security footage. And I also wanted to mention that in the months leading up to her death, Missy got a notification on LinkedIn from a person that she did not know. This person was a man, and he left her a very strange and concerning message on LinkedIn. She did not know this man. He was a stranger. It's actually not known what was said in this message. Missy showed this message to her friend asking, like, do you know who this is? Or do you know why he's saying this? And the friend didn't know who it was, and she was creeped out by it too. Missy deleted the message, so there was no way of knowing who this person was after this, and her friend didn't remember who it was either. That person was searched by the police, but because Missy had deleted the message, they didn't really have any way of finding out who it was. I personally don't think this message was harmful or somehow indicated premeditated murder, because if it did, if it was truly a threat on her life, I believe that Missy would have gone to the police. As for today, the people have several persons of interest. However, none of them have been arrested. They do not have a prime suspect, unfortunately. It's so crazy that they have footage of the person who did this. Not of the crime per se, but of the person who was responsible for the crime. It's been 10 years, we have security footage, and we still don't know who this person is. I don't think the police are stupid for not knowing. Honestly, it seems impossible to know who this person is, and I hope that we'll be able to solve it, but it seems impossible to solve. As I said in the beginning of this video, in a short while, on April 18th, it'll be the 10-year anniversary since the death of Missy Bevers, and we are still looking for answers and trying to find out what happened to her. Missy was a mother. She was beautiful, she was strong, she loved the Lord, and she gave so much to her community and to the people around her. And I just wish it didn't have to take this long for us to still be searching for answers for her. I'll be putting more videos about Missy in the description below if you want to know more about this case. I highly recommend that you do. As well as the tip line for the Midlothian Police Department will be in the description. If you have any information regarding this case, please call it in, and let's keep Missy's case alive. And yeah, that's all that I have for you guys today. Leave a comment, let me know what you guys think about this case. Leave some of your thoughts, some of your opinions. I love hearing from you guys. I personally think that, I don't even know. Usually I can think of some explanation, but for this case, I genuinely have no idea. I don't know what that person was there for. I don't know if it was a man, if it was a woman. I have no clue. And that is what is so creepy about it to me, is that it's so unsettling, and it's one of the most disturbing unsolved cases I've talked about. Anyway, to liven things up a little bit, we're going to be doing Song of the Week. If you guys are new to my channel, I do something called Song of the Week, where I talk about the song that I am currently obsessed with this week. And this week, it's basic, but I think I'm obsessed with Apocalypse by Cigarettes After Sex. It's just been like my vibe for the past few days. It's romantic. I'm gonna be honest, Valentine's Day is just making me feel like romantic, you know? Also, it's been raining where I live, and with the rain and Cigarettes After Sex, it's a match made in heaven. If you guys liked this video, please make sure to give it a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And with that being said, I hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I want to go to the store, but I don't have my car with me right now, so I'm gonna have to wait for my car to come back in order for me to go to the store. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. I love you. Bye.